Most people assume rock bottom is a place you land, but for me, it was a trap door my sister paid to open. 3 days after corporate security escorted me out of the building with a cardboard box, I found out Tessa hadn't called to offer support. She had bribed my landlord $1,000 to kick me out. She wanted me desperate enough to beg. But she forgot one crucial detail. I had nothing left to lose. The calendar invite appeared on my screen at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. It had no subject line, just a generic title that read, "Check-in." I stared at the block of time on my digital calendar. It was set for 15 minutes from now. My stomach did a slow, heavy roll, the kind that happens when you miss a step on a staircase in the dark. I was a senior analyst. I had survived 3 rounds of layoffs in 4 years. I knew the code. A check-in without an agenda, scheduled by a director I rarely spoke to, was never just a check-in. I looked around the open-plan office. It was a sea of gray carpet and beige dividers, humming with the white noise of HVAC systems and the soft clatter of keyboards. People were typing, drinking lukewarm coffee, planning their weekends. I wondered if they could see the invisible target painted on my back. I saved my current spreadsheet, a habitual reflex, and closed my laptop. When I walked into the glass-walled conference room, the director of operations was there, which was expected, but the woman from Human Resources sitting next to him was the final nail. She was a woman I had only ever seen at the holiday party, where she had worn a festive sweater and laughed too loudly at the CEO's jokes. Now, she wore a black blazer and a look of practiced, professional sorrow. "Claire, thanks for coming in," the director said. He did not gesture for me to sit, but I sat anyway. "I'm going to get right to it," he said, avoiding my eyes. He looked at a spot on the wall just past my left ear. "As part of a strategic realignment of the department, your role is being eliminated effective immediately." The words were sterile. They were clean, scrubbed of any blood or mess. Strategic realignment. It sounded like they were moving furniture, not destroying a life. I sat very still. I could hear the blood rushing in my ears, a high-pitched whine that threatened to drown him out. I focused on his tie. It was blue with tiny yellow sailboats. "This is not a reflection of your performance," the HR woman added quickly. Her voice was soft, the kind of tone you use when putting a sick animal to sleep. "It is purely a business decision. We have prepared a separation package for you." She slid a thick folder across the mahogany table. I placed my hand on it. The paper felt cool and smooth. "We are offering 2 weeks of severance for every year of service," she continued. "However, this offer is conditional. You need to sign the waiver included in the packet within 48 hours. 48 hours. 2 days to sign away my right to sue, my right to speak, my right to exist in their memory as anything other than a line item they had deleted." I opened the folder. The numbers were there, spelled out in black and white. It looked like a decent amount of money until I did the mental subtraction. Taxes, rent, health insurance. "I have a question," I said. My voice sounded steady, which surprised me. I was shaking under the table. "Go ahead," the director said. He looked relieved that I was not screaming. "I am currently leading the Q3 projection project. Who is taking that over?" The director blinked. He looked at the HR woman, then back to me. "We are distributing your responsibilities among the remaining team members." I nodded. It was a lie. I knew my team. They were already drowning. The company was not redistributing work. They were just letting it crash. And I was the ballast they were throwing overboard to see if the ship would float a little higher. "Please hand over your badge and laptop," the HR woman said. "Security will escort you to your desk to collect your personal effects." 10 minutes later, I was standing on the sidewalk. The city noise assaulted me. Honking taxis, the rumble of a delivery truck, the chatter of tourists. I was holding a cardboard box that contained a potted succulent, a framed photo of my parents, and a stapler I had bought with my own money. It felt impossibly light. It felt too small for how much I had just lost. I walked to the subway station, moving like a ghost. I swiped my Metro card, wondering how many swipes I could afford before I had to start walking everywhere, on the train. I found a seat in the corner and stared at the advertisement for a dermatology clinic across from me. I started doing the math. I could not help it. I was an analyst. I made sense of the world through numbers. My rent was $2,100 a month. It was a rent-stabilized apartment in a building that had seen better days. But it was mine, in this city. A rent-stabilized lease was like a winning lottery ticket. You did not let it go. My student loan payment was $450. Health insurance on the open market would be at least $600. Utilities, food, the credit card bill I had been aggressively paying down. A cold sweat broke out on the back of my neck. My emergency fund was thinner than it should have been. I had $3,000 in savings. That was it. It should have been $10,000. But last year, I had done something stupid and noble. I had paid off the shared credit card debt my ex-boyfriend left behind when he moved out. I did not want his name attached to me anymore, and I did not want my credit score ruined by his negligence. I had paid $5,000 to scrub him from my financial history. Now, that $5,000 was the difference between breathing room and suffocation. I got off the train at my stop. The neighborhood was gray and familiar. The bodega on the corner, the laundromat with the flickering neon sign, the cracked pavement I knew by heart. I walked to my building, a 6-story brick structure that leaned slightly to the left, like a tired old man. I kept my head down as I entered the lobby. I did not want to see anyone. I did not want to explain why I was home at 3 p.m. with a box of personal belongings. Mrs. Higgins was getting her mail. She was 80 years old and saw everything. I maneuvered around her, muttering a quick hello. But then I stopped. Dennis Harrow was standing by the elevator. My landlord was almost never in the building. He owned 6 or 7 properties in the neighborhood and managed them with a philosophy of benign neglect. He usually only appeared when a unit was vacant, and he was showing it to prospective tenants who did not know about the radiators that clanked all night. Dennis was a man in his late 50s with a comb-over that he thought was fooling everyone and a smile that showed too many teeth. He was wearing a leather jacket that looked expensive but fit him poorly. "Claire," he said. He sounded too enthusiastic. "You are home early." I shifted the box in my arms, trying to hide the succulent. "Just a half day." I lied. He looked at the box, then he looked at my face. His eyes were small and dark, like beads. "Taking some work home?" "Something like that." He nodded, rocking back on his heels. He did not move out of the way of the elevator doors. Good. Industry is booming, right?" I forced a smile. It felt like a mask of dried clay. "Sure." "Dennis, listen, I have to get upstairs." Right, he said. He stepped aside. But as I pressed the button, he spoke again. "Hey, your lease is up for renewal in 4 months, right?" I froze. Technically, yes, but in a rent-stabilized unit, renewal was automatic unless I had violated the lease. I just signed the form and he sent it back. Why? He shrugged, examining his fingernails. "Just checking, making sure you are still happy here. Still planning to renew?" "Of course," I said, my voice sharp. "I am not going anywhere." "Good to know," he said. He gave me a wave as the elevator doors closed. The smile was still there, plastered on his face, but it did not reach his eyes. I rode the elevator up to the 4th floor, my heart hammering against my ribs. That was weird. Dennis never asked about renewals months in advance. He usually waited until the last legally possible day to slide the paperwork under the door. I unlocked my apartment door and stepped inside. The air was stale. The sunlight hit the dust motes dancing in the afternoon light. It was a 1-bedroom apartment with uneven floors and a kitchen that was basically a hallway, but it was my sanctuary. I put the box on the kitchen table and sat down. I did not cry. I was too terrified to cry. I needed to talk to someone, but I did not want to tell my friends. Successful, competent. Claire did not get fired. Claire was the one who helped other people with their resumes. Claire was the one who bought the first round of drinks. I pulled out my phone and stared at the contact name. Tessa, my older sister. We had a complicated history. Tessa was 5 years older, prettier, and married to a man who made enough money that she could treat her career at a nonprofit foundation like a hobby. She loved me, I knew that, but she loved me best when I was a slight mess. When I was doing well, she was distant. When I was struggling, she was right there, ready to swoop in with advice I had not asked for. I needed to hear a familiar voice. I needed someone to tell me it was going to be okay. I pressed call. She picked up on the second ring. Hello? Hey, Tess, I said. Claire? Is everything okay? You never call in the middle of the day. I took a deep breath. I got laid off. There was a pause on the other end. Then, Tessa sighed. Oh, Claire. Oh, honey. They just cut the whole department, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. It was a strategic realignment. I knew that job was unstable. Tessa said. Her voice shifted instantly from shock to validation. I told you that firm was too small. Remember when I told you that? I closed my eyes. I did not need an I told you so. I needed a sister. Yeah, Tess, I remember. So, what are you going to do? She asked. Do you have savings? Not enough. I admitted. The shame burned in my chest. Well, Tessa said, and I could hear the gears turning. I could hear the planning tone entering her voice. This is actually perfect timing. Perfect timing? I lost my job. Tessa. No. Listen to me. You are spiraling. I can hear it. You are going to panic about rent, and you are going to make bad decisions. You should just move in with us for a while. I stiffened. Move in with you? Yes. We have the guest suite. It is empty. You can sublet your place, or just let it go. It is a dump anyway. Claire, come stay with us. You can save money. Get your head on straight. It was a generous offer on the surface. Her house in the suburbs was huge. The guest suite was nicer than my entire apartment, but I knew the cost. Tessa, that is really sweet, but I cannot give up my apartment. It is rent stabilized. If I leave, I lose it forever, and I need to be in the city for interviews. You can take the train. She dismissed. And honestly, Claire, maybe you need a break from the city. It makes you so hard. Hard. That was her word for independent. I appreciate it. Really. I said, but I'm going to try to make this work. I just need to budget carefully. Tessa's tone cooled. Okay, but if you come here, we would have to set some ground rules. I blinked. Rules? Well, yes. Doug and I have a routine. We cannot have you coming and going at all hours. So, no guests, obviously, and lights out by 11. Because the guest room is right under the nursery and the baby is a light sleeper. And none of your moody silences. Moody silences? I repeated. You know what I mean. When you shut down and stare at the wall, it brings the whole energy of the house down. And we would expect you to come to Sunday dinner with Mom and Dad every week. It would be good for you to reconnect with the family. I held the phone away from my ear for a second, staring at it in disbelief. She was not offering me a lifeboat. She was offering me a cage. She wanted me to be a teenager again, living under her roof, subject to her curfews and her emotional temperature checks. Tessa, I said, my voice firming up. I am 32 years old. I am not moving in with a curfew. I am just trying to help, she said, her voice dripping with wounded martyrdom. You are the one in crisis. Claire, beggars cannot be choosers. I am not a beggar. I said, I am just unemployed. There is a difference. Fine, she said. Do it your way, like always. But do not come crying to me when you are evicted. She hung up. I sat in the silence of my kitchen. My hand was shaking. I put the phone down on the table. The sun went down, casting long shadows across the linoleum. I made a list of groceries I already had. I checked the expiration dates on the cans in my cupboard. I was in survival mode now. The next morning, I woke up with a headache that sat behind my eyes like a heavy stone. I reached for my phone to check my email, hoping for a response to the 3 job applications I had panic sent the night before. There was an email, but it was not from a recruiter. It was from Dennis Harrow. Subject: Notice to cure. Lease violation. My heart stopped. I sat up in bed, my fingers fumbling to open the message. Dear Ms. Ward, this letter serves as a formal notice to cure regarding violations of your lease agreement at 402 West 14th Street, Unit 4B. It has come to management's attention that you are currently engaging in unauthorized subletting of the premises. Furthermore, we have received multiple complaints regarding excessive noise emanating from your unit between the hours of midnight and 2 in the morning. You have 10 days to cure these violations. Failure to do so will result in the termination of your tenancy and the commencement of eviction proceedings. Regards, Dennis Harrow Property Management. I stared at the screen, my mouth open. Unauthorized subletting? Excessive noise? I lived alone. I had not had a guest over in 3 weeks. I was in bed by 11 every night, usually reading or watching Netflix with headphones. I dialed Dennis's number immediately. He answered on the first ring. Harrow Management. Dennis, it is Claire Ward. I just got your email. What is this? Oh, Claire, he said. His voice was flat, devoid of the cheeriness from yesterday. Look, I am just following procedure. Procedure? I am not subletting. I am the only person living here. And noise complaints? I was asleep at midnight. I have reports. Claire, he said, I cannot ignore other tenants' complaints, and I have reason to believe you have someone staying there. Who? Who is staying here? Come check. Come look right now. I do not need to come check, he said, sounding offended. I know what my sources told me. Just fix it, Claire, or we are going to have a problem. He hung up. I sat there, stunned. It felt manufactured. It felt like he had thrown a handful of darts at a board of lease violations and just picked the ones that stuck. I got dressed and went downstairs to check the mail, needing to physically move to burn off the adrenaline. In the lobby, I ran into Marisol Nguyen. Marisol lived in 3B, directly below me. She was a nurse who worked the night shift. She looked tired, her dark hair pulled back in a messy bun, wearing scrubs. Hey, Claire, she said softly. Marisol. I said, feeling a surge of anxiety. Did you complain about noise from my apartment? She looked confused. What? No, I was at work last night, and you are like a mouse. I never hear you. I let out a breath I did not know I was holding. Okay, good. Dennis just sent me a notice claiming noise complaints. Marisol's eyes darkened. She stepped closer to me, lowering her voice. She looked around the lobby to make sure we were alone. Claire, she whispered, I heard him yesterday. Heard who? Dennis. He was in the hallway on his cell phone. I was coming home from my shift. He didn't see me. What did he say? He was laughing. He said, Don't worry, she will be out by the end of the month. A cold chill went down my spine. Was he talking about me? Marisol nodded grimly. He was standing right outside your door, and then he said something about, he said, the pressure is on. I leaned back against the wall. The email, the vague accusations, it was a setup. He knew I had lost my job? No. How could he know? Maybe he just sensed blood in the water. He has been doing this, Marisol said, her voice barely audible. The guy in 2A? The old man? Dennis hounded him for months about a cat he did not have. The guy finally just left. Dennis renovated the place and listed it for $3,000. He is trying to force me out. I realized he targets people who look vulnerable. Marisol said. She touched my arm. Be careful. Claire, I went back upstairs, but the apartment no longer felt like a sanctuary. It felt like a trap. I spent the next 4 hours manic cleaning. I scrubbed the bathroom grout. I organized my bookshelf by color. If he was going to claim I was violating the lease, I was going to make this place look like a museum. Then, I sat down at my laptop. I needed money. If I was going to fight Dennis, I needed to pay rent on time, every single month. I could not give him any ammunition. I logged into the state's unemployment portal. I had filed the claim the day I was fired. I clicked on check status. My eyes scanned the page. Status, pending adjudication. Reason, employer contest. Misconduct. The room spun. Misconduct? My employer was contesting my claim. They were saying I was fired for cause. If they won, I would get nothing. Zero. I grabbed the phone and called the HR number on my separation paperwork. It went to voicemail. I called again. Finally, the woman with the soft voice answered. "This is HR. This is Claire Ward. I am looking at my unemployment claim. It says you are contesting it for misconduct. You told me this was a layoff. You said it was a strategic realignment." "Ms. Ward," she said, her voice crisp now. "Upon further review of your file, we found instances of policy violations that supported a termination for cause." "What policy violations?" I demanded. I was never written up. I had stellar reviews. "We have documented instances of time theft," she said, "long lunches, personal internet usage." "You have got to be kidding me." I whispered, "Everyone takes lunch. Everyone checks their email. We have to protect the company's interests." She said, "You can appeal the decision with the state if you disagree." She hung up. They were lying. They were lying to save their unemployment insurance premiums. They knew I was broke. They knew I could not afford a lawyer to fight them. They were banking on me just giving up and fading away. I put my head in my hands. I was fighting a war on two fronts now. My former employer on one side, my landlord on the other, and I was in the middle, armed with nothing but a shrinking bank account and a box of office supplies. The buzzer rang. I jumped. I was not expecting anyone. I walked to the intercom and pressed the button. "Who is it?" "It is me," a voice crackled. "Tessa." I hesitated. I did not want to see her. I did not want her to see me like this, panic-stricken and cornered. But she was my sister. I buzzed her in. 2 minutes later, she was standing in my doorway. She was wearing a beige trench coat that looked pristine, holding 2 reusable grocery bags from an expensive organic market. "Surprise," she said. She did not hug me. She breezed past me into the apartment. "Tessa, what are you doing here?" I asked, closing the door. "I brought supplies," she said. She set the bags on the kitchen counter. "I know you are probably eating ramen. I brought kale, some quinoa. That roast chicken you like? Thank you." I said, it was kind, but it felt aggressive, like she was feeding a stray dog. She turned and looked around the apartment. Her eyes swept over the scuff marks on the floor, the peeling paint on the radiator, the old windows. She wrinkled her nose slightly. "God, Claire, this place, it really is depressing in the daylight, isn't it? It is my home. Tess, I could fix all of this," she murmured. She ran a finger along the counter. "If you just came to the house, we have a housekeeper. You know, you would not have to live like this." "I am fine," I said, crossing my arms. "Are you?" She looked at me. Her eyes were blue and piercing. "Just like our mothers. You look tired. You have dark circles. I am stressed. Tessa, I just lost my job, and my landlord is harassing me." "See?" she said. "It is too much. You are drowning." "I am swimming," I corrected. She laughed, a short, sharp sound. "You are treading water, and you are going to get tired." She started unpacking the groceries. She put the kale in the fridge, rearranging my shelves without asking. "So," she said casually, as she moved my yogurt to the back, "when are you packing?" "I am not packing. Tessa, I told you, I am staying." She stopped and turned to me. The smile dropped. "Claire, don't be stubborn. Mom is worried sick. I am worried. Just give up the apartment. It is not worth the fight." "Why do you want me to leave so bad?" I asked. "I want you to be safe," she said, "and I want you to stop pretending you can handle everything alone. You have always done this. You push people away and then you crash. I am just trying to catch you before you hit the bottom. I am not going to crash." I said. She stared at me for a long moment, then she sighed and picked up her purse. "Fine, have it your way. Enjoy the kale." She walked out. She did not say goodbye. I locked the door behind her and leaned my forehead against the wood. I felt exhausted. My bones felt heavy. That night, I sat on my couch in the dark. I did not turn on the lights. I was afraid that if I turned on the lights, Dennis would see them from the street and know I was awake. It was irrational. But fear is rarely rational. My phone buzzed. A voicemail. I did not recognize the number. I put the phone to my ear. "Hey, Claire. It is Dennis." His voice was different. It wasn't the flat, official tone from the morning. It was oddly cheerful, almost friendly. "Listen, I was thinking about our conversation. I do not want things to get ugly with lawyers and courts. Nobody wants that, right? So, here is an idea. I can make the problem go away." He paused. I could hear him breathing. "If you agree to vacate voluntarily in 10 days, just pack up and go. I will give you cash for your keys. I will give you $500. Cash. No questions asked. You get a fresh start. I get the unit back. Everyone wins. $500. My rent was over $2,000. The security deposit alone was worth more than that. He was offering me $500 to walk away from my home, my rights, and my stability. Think about it," he said. "It is a favor. Really. Saves you an eviction on your record. Let me know by tomorrow." The message ended. I sat in the dark. $500. It was an insult. It was a crumb thrown to a starving person. But the scariest part wasn't the money. It was the confidence in his voice. He sounded like a man who knew he was going to win. He sounded like a man who knew exactly how weak I was. He was squeezing me. Tessa was squeezing me. The company was squeezing me. I looked at the window. The streetlights cast a yellow glow on the floor. They thought I was going to break. They thought I was going to take the $500 and run to my sister's guest room and follow her rules and be the good little failure they expected me to be. I felt a spark in my chest. It was small, but it was hot. It was anger. I was not going to leave. I was going to document. I stood up and went to my desk. I opened a fresh notebook. I wrote the date at the top of the page. Day 1. Event. Landlord offered illegal buyout. 8:45 p.m. I wrote it down, and then I wrote down everything else. The conversation in the lobby, the email, Tessa's visit. If they wanted a fight, I would give them one. I might lose, but I was not going to make it easy. I was an analyst. I knew how to track data, and I was going to track every single move Dennis Harrow made until I either won or he dragged me out by my hair. I closed the notebook. The sound of the cover snapping shut was the only noise in the apartment. It sounded like a gunshot. The Rivergate Legal Aid Center was sandwiched between a discount pawn shop and a bakery that smelled entirely of burnt sugar. It was a place where people went when they had run out of options, a waiting room of the desperate and the disregarded. I sat on a hard plastic chair that wobbled every time I shifted my weight. Clutching a manila folder so tightly my knuckles had turned the color of old parchment. The room was filled with a low, anxious hum. A mother hushed a crying baby in the corner. An elderly man with shaking hands tried to organize a stack of crumpled papers on his lap. We were all there for the same reason. Someone with more power than us was trying to take something away. When my name was called, I walked into a small cubicle divided by a fabric partition. The volunteer was a woman named Sarah, who looked younger than me but had eyes that had seen 1,000 eviction notices. She did not waste time with pleasantries. "Let me see what you have," she said. I laid it all out. The lease, the notice to cure, the email from Dennis Harrow regarding the noise complaints, the screenshots of his cash for keys voicemail transcription. Sarah put on a pair of reading glasses and leaned over the documents. She read in silence for 5 minutes. The silence was heavy. I could hear the fluorescent light buzzing overhead, a sound like a trapped insect. "This is a classic intimidation tactic," she said finally. Looking up, she tapped the notice to cure with a pen. "Unauthorized subletting and excessive noise. These are the 2 easiest allegations to make because they are hard for a tenant to disprove. How do you prove a negative? How do you prove you were not loud?" "I am not loud," I said, and I hated how defensive I sounded. "I live alone. I read books. I believe you," she said. "But Dennis Harrow does not care about the truth. He cares about the timeline. Look at the dates. He sends the notice 2 days after you lose your job. Do you think he knows?" I froze. I do not see how he could, unless he checks my bank account. He cannot do that legally. She said, But landlords talk. Supers talk. If you come home at 3 in the afternoon with a box, people notice. She flipped to the transcript of the voicemail, and then, less than 24 hours later, he offers you money to leave. The timing is not coincidental. It is strategic. He is creating a paper trail of problems so that if you refuse the cash, he has grounds for eviction. I felt a cold stone settle in my stomach. So what do I do? You respond. She said, you do not call him. You do not talk to him in the hallway. You write, you treat this like a business transaction. You deny the allegations formally, and you demand proof. She slid a template across the desk. It was a simple letter, stripped of emotion. I dispute these claims. Please provide documentation of the alleged dates and times of the noise complaints. Please provide evidence of the unauthorized occupant. Make him work for it. Sarah said, bullies hate paperwork. I went home and typed the letter. I used my corporate voice, the one I had honed over 10 years of writing reports that nobody read. I made it cold. I made it precise. I hit send and felt a tiny, grim satisfaction. Dennis replied. 45 minutes later. His email had no subject line. Attached were 3 photos and a video file. Here is your proof. The body of the email read, I opened the first photo. It was a grainy, low-light picture of a black trash bag sitting next to the building's dumpster. Not inside it. A red circle had been drawn around the bag in MS Paint. I stared at it. It was a trash bag. It could have belonged to anyone. There was no identifying information, no clear shot of the contents. I opened the second photo. It was a blurry shot of the hallway outside my door. A pair of men's muddy work boots were sitting on the welcome mat. I frowned. I did not own muddy work boots. I zoomed in. The date stamp on the bottom of the photo was from 3 months ago. I remembered those boots. My ex-boyfriend had stopped by to pick up the last of his things. He had been there for 20 minutes. I clicked on the video. It was 5 seconds of shaky footage taken from the stairwell. You could hear music playing. It was loud, thumping bass, but the video was dark, and there was no way to tell which door the sound was coming from. It could have been Marisol's unit. It could have been the unit above me. This was his evidence? It was pathetic. It was staged. I felt a surge of adrenaline. It was insulting that he thought this would work. He thought I was stupid. He thought I would see a picture of a trash bag and collapse in a heap of guilt. I saved the files to a new folder on my laptop labeled harassment. Later that evening, I heard a knock on my door. It was a soft, rhythmic tap, not the heavy pound of a landlord. I opened it to find Marisol. She was holding a plate of cookies covered in plastic wrap. Peace offering, she said. I feel bad about the other day. Scaring you. You didn't scare me. I lied. You warned me. Come in. She stepped inside, and behind her was a man I had seen in the lobby but never spoken to. He was in his late 60s, leaning on a cane, wearing a faded cardigan that had seen better decades. This is Gene, Marisol said. Gene Holloway. He is in 2C. He has been here since the 90s. Gene nodded at me. His eyes were sharp, buried in a web of wrinkles. Heard you are getting the treatment, he said. His voice was gravel and smoke. The treatment? I asked. The Harrow special? Gene said. He limped over to my couch and sat down with a groan. Noise complaints, subletting accusations. Next, he will say he smells gas coming from your unit and needs emergency access. I sat down opposite him. Marisol perched on the arm of the couch. He sent me pictures of trash bags. I said, Gene chuckled, a dry rattling sound. Yeah, he did that to Mrs. Gable in 4A last year. Sent her a picture of a cigarette butt in the hallway and claimed she was smoking indoors. Mrs. Gable has been on oxygen for 5 years. If she lit a match, she would blow the whole floor up. What happened to her? I asked. She left. Gene said, got scared, moved in with her daughter in Ohio. Dennis painted the walls, put in a cheap granite countertop, and raised the rent by $800. I looked at Marisol, then back at Gene. So it is a pattern. It is a business model. Gene corrected. He wants to renovate. He wants to turn this building into luxury lofts for the tech kids spilling over from the city center. But he cannot renovate with us sitting here on our rent-stabilized leases. So he shakes the tree. See who falls out. Why hasn't anyone stopped him? I asked. Jean shrugged. Who has the money? Who has the time? Most people here are working 2 jobs. They get a notice. They get scared. They leave. It is easier to leave than to fight a man who owns the building you sleep in. I looked around my apartment. The sun was setting, casting long, orange rectangles on the floor. I thought about the job I had lost. I thought about Tessa and her guest suite with the rules. I am not leaving. I said. Jean looked at me. He studied my face for a long moment. You sure about that? It gets ugly. He does not stop at letters. I am sure, I said. I have nowhere else to go. Good, Jean said. He tapped his cane on the floor. Then you better start writing things down. Every time you see him, every time the heat goes off, every time the water runs brown, you make a record. Because the only thing a guy like Dennis is afraid of is a judge who can read. After they left. I went to the stationery store on the corner. I bought a thick, hardcover ledger, black spine, heavy paper. I came back and sat at my kitchen table. I opened the book. Log of Events. Tenancy of Claire Ward. I started writing. I wrote down the date of the layoff. I wrote down the first conversation with Dennis by the elevator. I wrote down the specific times of his calls. I transcribed the voicemails word for word. My hand cramped, but I kept writing, for the first time in days. The panic in my chest receded. It was replaced by something cold and hard. I was an analyst. My job was to find patterns in data. Dennis thought he was creating chaos, but he was actually creating data points, and I was going to collect every single one of them. My phone buzzed on the table, a text from Tessa. I didn't want to look, but I did. It was a photo. It was a picture of her guest room. The bed was made with crisp white linens, piled high with decorative pillows in shades of blue and cream. There was a vase of fresh hydrangeas on the nightstand. It looked like a page from a lifestyle magazine. It looked sterile. It looked like a room where you were afraid to sit down. The caption read, "It is ready whenever you stop being stubborn." A second text popped up immediately after. "Mom is worried. Don't make this harder than it has to be." I stared at the screen. Don't make this harder. As if I was the one creating the difficulty. As if I was the one who had fired myself and then bribed my landlord to harass me. Wait, the thought hit me like a physical blow. I had suspected it, but I hadn't let myself fully believe it. Tessa's timing was too perfect. She showed up with groceries right after the first notice. She was texting me now. Just as the pressure was ramping up, I typed a reply. My fingers were shaking. "Did you talk to my landlord?" I watched the 3 little dots appear, disappear, appear again. She didn't text back. Instead, a voice note appeared. I pressed play. Tessa's voice filled the kitchen. It was sharp, incredulous. "Claire, honestly, you sound paranoid. Why would I waste my time talking to your landlord? Dennis is a businessman. He does not care about our family drama. You are the one who cannot pay rent, and now you are looking for someone to blame. Grow up." Then, she laughed. It was a light, breathy laugh. The kind of laugh you use at a cocktail party when someone says something slightly gauche. "Just come home. Claire, stop acting like a victim." I played the note again, and again. Dennis is a businessman. She used his first name. I had never mentioned his name to her. I had always just called him my landlord. Maybe I had said it once, years ago? But Tessa didn't remember details of my life unless they were useful to her. She remembered his name, and she said it with a familiarity that made my skin crawl. I did not reply. I saved the voice note to the Harrow_harassment folder. 2 days later, the lobby changed. I came home from a fruitless interview for a junior analyst position that paid $20,000 less than my old salary. As I walked through the glass doors, I noticed the bulletin board. Usually, the board was a mess of takeout menus and handwritten notes about lost keys. Today, it was cleared. In the center was a large, glossy poster. "Exciting changes coming soon. Renovation schedule starting next month." Underneath that was a smaller, official-looking paper. Notice of mandatory inspection. Management will be conducting routine unit inspections on the 25th of the month to assess plumbing and electrical systems for upcoming upgrades. Access is required. I stood there reading it. Gene walked up behind me. He smelled of tobacco and rain. Routine. My foot, he muttered. He's trying to get in. I said, he is fishing. Gene said, he wants to see who is hiding a pet, who has an unauthorized washing machine, who has a roommate not on the lease. And he trailed off, looking at the renovation poster. And what? And inspections usually come after complaints. Gene said quietly, if the city is sniffing around, Dennis pretends he is being proactive. He posts a notice, acts like he is fixing things. It is a shell game. I looked at the poster again. Dennis had ripped down the old sign-up sheet where tenants could list maintenance requests. He was erasing the evidence of his neglect and replacing it with a promise of a future we couldn't afford. I went upstairs and checked my bank account. It was the 5th of the month. My rent was set to auto-pay on the 1st. I logged in. The balance was higher than it should have been. My stomach dropped. The rent hadn't cleared. I clicked on the transaction history. Nothing. I logged into the tenant portal Dennis used for payments. It was a clunky third-party website that looked like it hadn't been updated since 2010. Status: payment failed. Reason: system error. I panicked. I had the money. The money was right there in my checking account. I had received a confirmation email on the 1st saying payment initiated. I pulled up the email. It was there. Thank you for your payment of $2,100. But on the portal, it showed as unpaid. And right next to it, a late fee of $50 had been added. I called the portal's support line. A recorded voice told me to leave a message. I called Dennis. Harrow Management. Dennis, it is Claire. My rent payment failed. The portal says system error. I have the confirmation email that I paid on time. System error? Dennis sounded bored. That is between you and the payment processor. Claire, I just see what hits my bank, and your rent didn't hit, but I have the confirmation. I can forward it to you. Look, he said, cutting me off. This is the 2nd month in a row there has been a glitch. It looks like habitual late payment to me. The 2nd month? Last month was fine. It cleared 3 days late last month. Claire, I let it slide. But now? It is a pattern. He was lying, or he was manipulating the system on his end. I will write you a check. I said, I will bring it down right now. I do not take personal checks. He said quickly, portal only. It is in the lease, but the portal isn't working. Then fix it. Claire. He hung up. I sat there, my hand gripping the phone so hard it hurt. He was locking the doors from the outside and blaming me for not being able to get in. I took a screenshot of the error message. I took a screenshot of the confirmation email. I printed them both out and taped them into my logbook. Event: rent portal failure. Landlord refused alternate payment. Claimed habitual lateness. Later that afternoon, I ran into Marisol in the laundry room. She was folding scrubs, her face pale and drawn. He is coming into the apartments, she said. The inspection. I know. I saw the sign. Claire, she said, stopping her folding. I did something. What? A few months ago, the mold in my bathroom. It smelled like wet earth all the time. I told Dennis, and he did nothing. He told me to open a window. So, I called 311. You called the city? Marisol nodded. I filed a complaint. I didn't hear anything back for a long time. But last week, I got a letter saying an inspector was assigned to the case. I looked at the washing machine spinning its cycle. The pieces clicked into place. That is why he is doing the inspection, I said. He got wind of the city inspector. He needs to get into the units before the city does. If he finds the violations first, he can claim he is already addressing them, or he can blame the tenants. He is going to see the mold. Marisol whispered, and he is going to blame me. He is going to say I caused it. He can't. I said, it is structural. He can do whatever he wants, she said. He is the landlord, not if we document it. I said. I grabbed her arm gently. Marisol, do you have the emails where you reported it to him? Yes. Send them to me. I am building a file. She looked at me, fear warring with hope in her eyes. You think it will help? I do not know, I said honestly, but it is better than doing nothing. 2 days later, the envelope arrived. It was taped to my door this time, a formal, legal-sized envelope. I opened it in the hallway. My hands were steady, which surprised me. I was getting used to the adrenaline. Notice of termination of tenancy. To Claire Ward. You are hereby notified that your tenancy is terminated effective 30 days from this date. I scanned the legalese. It cited the noise complaints. It cited the unauthorized occupant, which was still a lie. It cited habitual late payment of rent. But then, at the bottom, there was a sentence that made my breath hitch. Tenant has refused reasonable relocation assistance offered by management. Relocation assistance? He meant the $500. He was framing his insulting bribe as a formal relocation offer, and my refusal as unreasonableness. He was twisting my survival instinct into a legal failure. I went into my apartment and threw the letter on the table next to the logbook. 30 days. I had 30 days to pack up my life, find a new apartment with no job and a contested unemployment claim, and disappear. I walked to the window and looked down at the street. It was raining. The city looked gray and hostile. I felt a vibration in my pocket. Another email. I checked it, expecting a job rejection or another taunt from Dennis. It wasn't an email. It was a physical letter. Wait, I had checked the mail downstairs before coming up. There was a second envelope in my stack that I hadn't opened yet. I picked it up. It was plain white, no return address, no stamp. It had been hand-delivered to my mailbox. I tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper. The text was typed, centered on the page. Leave quietly, and you will get a fresh start. Fight, and you will lose everything. There was no signature. I turned the paper over. Nothing. I held it up to the light. Just cheap printer paper. My heart began to hammer against my ribs. A frantic, bird-like rhythm. This wasn't legal maneuvering anymore. This wasn't about lease clauses or rent portals. This was a threat. Lose everything. What did I have left to lose? My furniture? My reputation? My safety? I looked at the door. I checked the deadbolt. It was locked. But Dennis had a key. I realized then that the game had changed. I wasn't just fighting for an apartment. I was fighting a man who believed he owned not just the building, but the people inside it, and somewhere out in the suburbs. My sister was sitting in her pristine house, waiting for me to break. I sat down at the table. I picked up my pen. I opened the logbook to a fresh page. Event. Anonymous threat received via mailbox. 5:15 p.m. My handwriting was jagged, but legible. I took the plain white note and I taped it into the book. I smoothed the tape down over the corners. I was not leaving quietly. If they wanted me out, they were going to have to drag me out screaming, and I was going to make sure every single scream was recorded, time-stamped, and filed in triplicate. I picked up my phone and called the Legal Aid Center. Sarah, I said when she answered, "It is Claire. I need to file a formal complaint." "Good," she said. "I was waiting for you to say that." I looked at the note in the logbook. "And Sarah?" "Yes? I think we are going to need more than a letter this time." I hung up. The apartment was quiet. But it was no longer the silence of an empty home. It was the silence of a trench before the whistle blows. I was ready. I sat across from Sarah at the Rivergate Legal Aid Center for the second time in 3 days. The fluorescent lights hummed with a headache-inducing frequency. But I barely noticed them. I was too focused on the strategy she was laying out on the scratched laminate table. "You are playing defense," Sarah said, tapping her pen against a legal pad. "And defense is exhausting. You wait for him to strike, and then you block. We need to switch you to offense." "How?" I asked. I had no money. I had no job. I had a landlord who was inventing lease violations out of thin air. "You need to establish a protected activity," she said. "In this city, it is illegal for a landlord to evict a tenant in retaliation for reporting health and safety violations. If you file a formal complaint about the condition of your apartment, and he tries to evict you shortly after." The court presumes it is retaliation. It gives you a shield. I thought about my apartment. I had spent the last week scrubbing it, trying to prove it was perfect. Now she was telling me to prove it was broken. It feels dangerous. I said, poking the bear. The bear is already awake. Claire, Sarah said grimly, and he is hungry. You need to show the court that you are a responsible tenant exercising your rights, not just a squatter resisting removal. Are there issues in the unit? Real ones? I hesitated. There were always issues. It was an old building. The window frame in the bedroom leaked every time it rained hard, leaving a damp, dark stain on the drywall. The light in the hallway flickered constantly. No matter how many times I changed the bulb, I had just learned to live with them. The bedroom window leaks, I said, and the electrical wiring in the hall is faulty. Report it. Sarah said, call 311. Get a case number. Do it today. I walked home feeling a strange mix of nausea and determination. When I got to my apartment, I did not just look at the leaking window. I photographed it. I took a video of the flickering light, the way it buzzed and popped like a dying insect. I dialed the city's housing hotline. My voice shook as I gave the operator my address. When she gave me the case number, HPD 4920, I wrote it down in my logbook in thick, black ink. It felt like I was unlocking a weapon I had not known I carried. 2 hours later, my phone rang. It was Dennis. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to the message immediately. Hey there, Claire? His voice came through the speaker. It was different this time. The aggression from the eviction notice was gone, replaced by a sugary, condescending warmth that made my skin crawl. It is Dennis. Look, I was thinking about you. I know things are tough right now with the job situation. I want to help you out. I am willing to bump that relocation offer up. Let us say $1,500, cash, today. I paused the recording. $1,500. He had tripled the offer. He continued, it is the best deal you are going to get. Sweetheart, honestly, you do not want an eviction on your record. It follows you forever. It is like a credit scar. Nobody will rent to you. Just take the money. Start fresh. Call me. Sweetheart. The word hung in the air of my quiet kitchen. He was afraid. He must have gotten the notification from the city. He knew that once the inspector arrived, his renovation narrative would crumble under the weight of code violations. I did not call him back. I wrote the time of the call in my logbook. Event. Landlord offered $1,500. Tone shift. Retaliatory coercion. 3 days later, I put on my best suit, the navy blue one I used for final round interviews, and took the subway to the housing court. The courthouse was a massive limestone building that smelled of floor wax and old sweat. The security line wound out the door. I stood sandwiched between a woman clutching a baby and a man in a stained painter's uniform. We were all holding envelopes. We were all staring at our phones or the floor. When I finally got through the metal detectors, I felt small. The building was designed to make you feel small. The ceilings were too high. The marble echoes were too loud. I found my courtroom, a windowless box packed with rows of wooden benches. I sat in the back. I watched the proceedings. It was a factory line of misery. Case number 451. The clerk would call. The tenant would stand up, usually alone. The landlord's lawyer would stand up, usually holding a thick file. They would murmur to the judge. The judge would sign something. The tenant would leave, looking stunned. Next case, it was routine. That was the most terrifying part. To the judge, to the clerks, to the lawyers. The dissolution of someone's home was just Tuesday morning paperwork. Claire Ward versus Harrow Management. The clerk called. I stood up. My legs felt like lead. I walked to the front of the room. Dennis was there. He was wearing a suit that fit him better than the leather jacket. Standing next to a man with slicked-back gray hair and a briefcase that looked like it cost more than my car. This is Mr. Vance, representing the landlord. The judge said, she was a woman with tired eyes and reading glasses perched on the end of her nose. And you are Ms. Ward? Prosy? Yes, Your Honor. I said, my voice was steady, but I was gripping the edge of the table so hard my fingers were white. Mr. Vance didn't even look at me. He opened his file. Your Honor, this is a clear case of holdover. The tenant has violated the lease terms regarding noise and unauthorized occupants. We have served the notice to cure and the notice of termination. I have not violated the lease. I said, I spoke clearly, projecting to the back of the room like I was presenting a quarterly report. The allegations are fabricated. I live alone. I have no noise complaints against me from any verified source. Mr. Vance sighed. A theatrical sound of patience being tested. We have photographic evidence, Your Honor. The judge opened the file Dennis's lawyer had handed her. She flipped through the pages. She paused at the photo of the trash bags. She squinted at the photo of the hallway. Mr. Vance, the judge said. Her voice was flat. Yes, Your Honor. This photo of the trash. There is no date stamp. And this photo of the boots. The metadata says it was taken in March. It is currently July. Mr. Vance shifted his weight. It is illustrative of a pattern. Your Honor, it is illustrative of nothing if it is not contemporaneous, the judge snapped. She looked at Dennis. Mr. Harrow, are these the only proofs of residency violation you have? Dennis looked at his lawyer, then at the judge. He looked like a child caught with his hand in the jar. We have witness statements. I see no affidavits here. The judge said. She turned to me. Ms. Ward, you deny these claims? Absolutely, Your Honor. I also want to note that these notices began 2 days after I lost my employment, and I have subsequently filed a complaint with the city regarding maintenance issues that Mr. Harrow has ignored. Case number HPD 4920. The judge raised an eyebrow. She looked back at Mr. Vance. These notices are defective, she said. The dates are inconsistent. The evidence is flimsy. And the timeline suggests potential retaliatory intent. Mr. Vance, if you want to proceed, you need to bring me actual evidence, not grainy photos of garbage. She scribbled something on the file. Adjourned for 3 weeks. Mr. Harrow, cure your own paperwork before you try to cure the tenant. She banged the gavel. I stood there, blinking. It wasn't a victory. It was just a pause button. But I had survived. I looked at Dennis. His face was a mask of red fury. He didn't look at me. He turned and stormed out of the courtroom. His lawyer trailing behind him, I gathered my papers and walked out into the hallway. My knees were shaking now. I needed air. I pushed through the heavy revolving doors and stepped out onto the wide sidewalk. The sun was blinding. I took a deep breath, trying to slow my heart rate. That was when I saw the car. It was parked across the street, idling in a no-standing zone, a silver luxury sedan. I knew that car. I knew the license plate. Tessa. She was sitting in the driver's seat, wearing large sunglasses, staring intently at the courthouse entrance. I froze. Why was she here? As soon as she saw me, she shifted gears. The car lurched forward, merging aggressively into traffic. She didn't wave. She didn't stop. She drove away as if she was fleeing a crime scene. A cold certainty settled over me, heavier than the humidity. Tessa wasn't just checking on me. She wasn't just a worried sister. She was waiting for the verdict. She was waiting to see if I had been crushed. I pulled out my phone. My hands were trembling, but not from fear anymore, from rage. I didn't call her. I walked to the subway and took the train to the suburbs. I didn't think. I just moved. An hour later, I was standing on her front porch. The house was a sprawling colonial with a manicured lawn that looked like it had been cut with scissors. I rang the bell. Tessa answered. She was wearing yoga pants and a cashmere sweater. She looked surprised, but not happy. Claire? She said. I didn't know you were coming. I saw you. I said. She blinked. What? I saw you outside the courthouse. Tessa. Across the street. In your car. She hesitated. A flicker of panic crossed her face. Then she smoothed it over with a laugh. Oh, yes. I was in the city for an appointment. I thought I would swing by and see if you needed a ride. But then I saw you walking out and you looked busy. You didn't wave. I said, you drove away like you were scared. Don't be dramatic, she said, opening the door wider. Come in. You look frantic. I walked into her foyer. It smelled of lavender and expensive cleaning products. I stood on the marble tile and looked at her. Why were you there? Tessa, I asked. And don't lie to me. She crossed her arms, wrapping the cashmere tighter around herself. I told you. I was worried. Mom is worried. We just wanted to know what happened. You could have called, I said. You could have texted. But you were there, watching, like you were waiting for a show. She let out a sharp sigh. Fine. You want the truth? I wanted to see if you were finally going to wake up. Wake up? Yes. Claire, wake up, she shouted. The veneer of calm cracked. I wanted to see if the judge would finally knock some sense into you. I wanted to be there to pick up the pieces when you finally realized you can't do this alone. I stared at her. You wanted me to lose. I wanted you to stop drowning, she cried. She paced a small circle on the rug. Look at you. You are unemployed. You are fighting a landlord who has more money than you. You are living in a dump. And for what? Pride? I have a room upstairs waiting for you. I have a plan for you. But you are so obsessed with this performance of independence. Performance? I said quietly. My life is a performance to you? It is, she said. It always has been. Even when we were kids, you always had to do it yourself. You always had to prove you didn't need anyone. Well, guess what, Claire? Getting fired proved it. It proved you can't handle life alone. You need a shove. You have always needed a shove. I felt like she had slapped me. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. She didn't see my struggle as survival. She saw it as a tantrum. She didn't see my independence as strength. She saw it as a flaw that needed to be corrected. And you decided to give me that shove? I asked. I am trying to help you, she screamed. Did you help Dennis? I asked. The name hung in the air. Tessa stopped pacing. She looked at me. Her eyes widened slightly. Dennis he is just a businessman. Claire, she said. Her voice dropped to a normal volume, but it sounded strained. He does what he has to do. If you paid your rent, none of this would be happening. You used his name again, I said. You speak about him like you know him. I don't know him, she said quickly. Too quickly. I just saw his name on the papers you showed me. I never showed you papers. Tessa. Silence. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked loudly. Tick, tock, tick, tock. I never showed you the eviction notice. I said softly. I told you about it on the phone. I never showed you the name Dennis Harrow. Tessa's face went pale. She laughed. A brittle, high-pitched sound. You must have mentioned it. You talk about it all the time. You are obsessed. I looked at my sister. I looked at the person who had taught me how to tie my shoes, who had been my maid of honor, who had held my hand at our father's heart surgery. And I saw a stranger. I didn't argue. I didn't scream. A strange calm settled over me. It was the calm of the analyst finding the error in the spreadsheet. I see. I said. I turned to the door. Where are you going? She asked. Her voice was shrill. Stay for dinner. Doug will be home soon. I have to go. I said. I have a lot of work to do. I walked out. I didn't look back. But as I walked down the driveway, I pulled out my phone and opened the logbook app I had synced to the cloud. Event. Confrontation with Tessa. She knew Landlord's name without being told. Admitted she wanted me to lose to shove me back home. I took the train back to the city. My heart was broken, but my head was clear. When I got back to the building, Marisol was waiting for me in the lobby. She looked anxious. How did court go? She asked. We survived. I said, adjourned. But Marisol, I need to ask you something. What? You said you saw Dennis take an envelope from a woman. She nodded. Yeah, a few weeks ago, near the back entrance. Describe her. I said, please, be specific. Marisol frowned, thinking. She was tall, blonde. She had this coat, a tan trench coat, expensive looking, and she stood really straight, like a dancer, or someone who judges people. I pulled up a photo on my phone. It was a picture of Tessa and me from Christmas. Tessa was wearing her beige Burberry trench. "Is this her?" I asked. Marisol looked at the screen. She squinted. "Yeah," she said slowly. "That looks like her. The hair is the same. The coat is the same. That is your sister?" I nodded. The sickness in my stomach was heavy. "Like lead. She bribed him," I whispered. "She paid him to kick me out." Marisol's eyes went wide. "Your own sister? Why?" "Because she loves me," I said bitterly, "and she wants to own me." I went upstairs to my apartment. The red light on my router was blinking. I sat down at my laptop. I needed to update my resume. I needed to apply for jobs. I couldn't let the conspiracy swallow me. I had to keep moving. I opened my email. There was a message from my former employer. Subject: Separation Summary. Final. I opened it. It was a PDF document. Reason for separation: performance issues/misconduct. Notes: employee demonstrated a lack of focus and failure to meet professional standards during Q3 critical period. Multiple unaccounted absences noted. I stared at the screen. Unaccounted absences? I had worked 60-hour weeks. I had come in on weekends. I had skipped my own birthday dinner to finish a deck for the VP. They were rewriting history. They were creating a paper trail to justify denying my unemployment. Just like Dennis was creating a paper trail to justify the eviction. Just like Tessa was creating a narrative that I was unstable. Everyone was writing a story about me, and in every version, I was the villain, or the failure, or the victim who needed saving. I closed the laptop. I felt like screaming. I felt like throwing the computer through the window, but I didn't. I picked up the logbook. I printed the separation summary. I taped it to a page. Event: former employer falsified separation documents. Coordinated effort to deny financial stability. The next morning, I had an interview. It was for a contract role at a logistics company. The office was in a basement in Queens. The pay was hourly. The recruiter was a man with a kind face and a cheap tie. He looked at my resume. "You were a senior analyst at a major firm." He said, "Why did you leave?" I hesitated. I couldn't say laid off, because my former employer would say fired. I couldn't say fired, because I hadn't done anything wrong. There was a restructuring. I said carefully, "My department was affected." He nodded, but he looked down at his notes. "I see. We usually do a background check. Will they confirm that?" My heart hammered. No, they would confirm misconduct. They might contest the terminology. I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "There is currently a dispute regarding the classification of the separation, but my performance reviews prior to that were exemplary. I can provide references from colleagues." The recruiter closed the folder. "Well, Claire, you are obviously qualified. Overqualified, really. But this role, it requires a high level of trust. We handle sensitive inventory. A dispute with a past employer. It is a red flag." I walked out of the basement office into the bright, hot sun of Queens. I felt exhausted. Not just tired, drained. It felt like I was running a marathon while people were throwing rocks at my ankles. I checked my phone. I had a forwarded email from Jean. Subject: FWD. Building alert. Please read. I scrolled down to see the original message from Dennis Harrow. It had been sent to every tenant in the building. Dear residents, it has come to management's attention that a disruptive resident is spreading misinformation regarding building safety and upcoming renovations. This individual has been filing false complaints with the city and harassing staff. We are committed to improving this building for everyone. Please report any harassment or suspicious activity immediately. We are working to resolve this issue and restore peace to our community. Regards, Harrow Management. He didn't name me. He didn't have to. Everyone knew who the disruptive resident was. I looked up at the building as I approached it. It loomed over me. 6 stories of brick and mortar. I saw a curtain twitch in a window on the 3rd floor. He was turning the neighbors against me. He was painting me as the enemy of their peace and their renovations. He was isolating me. I stood on the sidewalk, clutching my bag. I was alone. My family had betrayed me. My boss had lied about me. My landlord was hunting me, and now, my neighbors were being told to watch me. But as I stood there, I felt that cold, hard thing in my chest again. He called me disruptive. Fine. If he wanted disruptive, I would be catastrophic. I walked into the lobby, head high, and pressed the button for the elevator. I wasn't going to hide. I was going to be the most visible, documented, undeniable problem Dennis Harrow had ever met. Dennis Harrow's email was designed to silence me. It was a digital muzzle, meant to shame me into retreating behind my locked door while the rest of the building whispered about the disruptive resident in 4B. He expected me to hide. He expected me to feel the weight of the collective glare and shrink until I disappeared. But Dennis had made a critical error in his calculation. He assumed I was operating on emotion, fueled by the erratic panic of the newly unemployed. He didn't realize that I'd stopped feeling panic days ago. I was operating on logic now, and logically. The only way to counter a narrative of chaos was with a narrative of undeniable fact. I sat at my kitchen table, the laptop screen glowing in the dim light. I opened a blank document. I didn't write a manifesto. I didn't write a defense. I wrote a timeline. May 3rd. Notice to cure issued to Unit 4B regarding noise complaints. No evidence provided. May 5th. Cash for keys offer made via voicemail to Unit 4B. Amount, $500. May 12th. Rent payment for Unit 4B rejected by portal despite sufficient funds. Late fee applied. May 15th. Second cash for keys offer made. Amount, $1,500. Condition, vacate in 10 days. I kept it sterile. I removed all adjectives. I listed the dates, the actions, and the lack of documentation. At the bottom of the page, in bold, I wrote a single question. Have you received a cash offer to move out without paperwork? If so, you are not alone. I printed 30 copies on my home printer. The rhythmic whir of the paper feeding through the tray was the only sound in the apartment. It sounded like a machine gun firing in slow motion. At 2 a.m, when the building was heavy with sleep, I slipped into the hallway. I didn't wear shoes. I wore thick wool socks to dampen my footsteps. I moved like a ghost. I slid one sheet under every door on my floor. Then I took the stairs down to the 3rd floor, then the 2nd, then the 1st. I felt a strange, vibrating tension in my chest as I knelt before each door. Behind every layer of painted wood was a life. Someone worrying about rent. Someone sleeping before a double shift. Someone terrified of the man who held the keys to their sanctuary. I was delivering a message in a bottle, hoping it would wash up on the right shore. I finished on the ground floor and crept back up to my unit. I locked the deadbolt. I waited. The response wasn't immediate. For 2 days, the building was silent. I passed neighbors in the hall who looked at the floor or checked their mail with aggressive focus. I started to worry that I had overplayed my hand, that the fear Dennis had cultivated was too thick to penetrate with a single sheet of printer paper. Then, on Thursday evening, there was a scratch at my door. Not a knock, a scratch, like a cat asking to be let in. I opened it to find Nora Pell. Nora lived in 1A. She was a woman in her 60s with dyed red hair that was fading to white at the roots. She worked at the diner 2 blocks away, and I had seen her smoking on the front stoop 100 times. But we had never exchanged more than a nod. She was holding my flyer. Her hands were trembling. "Is this true?" she asked. Her voice was a whisper. Rough with smoke and nerves. "It is true," I said. She looked over her shoulder at the empty hallway, then stepped into my apartment without asking. I closed the door behind her. "He offered you money?" she asked, standing in the middle of my living room, clutching her purse to her chest like a shield. "Yes," I said, $1,500. Nora let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. She sat down heavily on my couch. The springs creaked. "He only offered me $600, she said. I sat down opposite her, pulling my logbook toward me. "When, Nora? 2 weeks ago," she said. She stared at the flyer in her hand. "He came to my door. He said the building was going to be condemned. He said the pipes were rotting out and the city was going to shut the water off next month. He said if I left now, he would give me $600 cash to help with a moving truck, but I had to go by the 1st. Did he give you anything in writing, I asked? She shook her head. He said it had to be off the books, because of taxes. He said he was doing me a favor. And did you take it? Nora looked down at her shoes. They were worn sneakers with holes in the toes. I took it, she whispered. I was scared. Claire, I don't have anywhere to go. But he made it sound like the roof was going to cave in on my head. I signed a paper he had, just a handwritten thing saying I was surrendering the lease. He gave me $600 in $20 bills. She looked up at me, her eyes wet. I spent it. I had a dental bill. And now I have to be out in 4 days. I haven't even packed. I don't know what to do. I felt a surge of cold fury. Dennis was preying on the weak. He was targeting the people who didn't have savings, who didn't have lawyers, who would hear the word condemned and panic. And he was doing it with cash to avoid the paper trail of illegal buyouts. You are not leaving, I said firmly, but I signed. You signed a handwritten note under duress based on fraudulent information. I said, I sounded like Sarah from the legal clinic. I surprised myself. The building is not being condemned. There is no city order. He lied to you to get a rent-controlled unit back so he can renovate it and charge $3,000. Nora stared at me. He lied? He lied. I confirmed, and we are going to prove it. I texted Marisol. She came up 5 minutes later, still wearing her scrubs, when she saw Nora crying on my couch. Her face hardened. We sat at my kitchen table for 2 hours. We wrote a statement. I typed while Nora talked. She described the date, the time, the exact words Dennis used. She described the envelope of cash. She described the fear. When we finished, I printed it out. Nora signed it with a shaking hand. I read it over. It was powerful. It wasn't just data anymore. It was a story. It was proof that Dennis wasn't just a bad landlord. He was a predator. And by keeping the transactions in cash, he was likely committing tax fraud. This stays with me, I said, putting the statement in a plastic sleeve in my binder. We are going to use this. But Nora, you have to stay put. If he comes back, you don't open the door. You call me. He scares me, she admitted. He scares all of us, Marisol said, putting a hand on Nora's shoulder. That is how he wins. But he is scared of her. She nodded at me. I looked at the binder. I didn't feel scary. I felt tired. But if Dennis was afraid of the truth, then I was terrified for him. The next morning, the building was plastered with new notices. Urgent. Mandatory maintenance entry. Management will be entering all units within 24 hours to address plumbing system upgrades. It was a panic move. Dennis had seen the city inspector's case number. He knew the timeline. He was trying to get into the apartments to slap paint over the mold and duct tape the leaking pipes before the official inspection happened. He was trying to sanitize the crime scene. I stood in the lobby, reading the notice. Gene was there, leaning on his cane. He is running scared. Gene muttered, 24 hours notice is the legal minimum. He usually doesn't fix a leak for 6 months. Now suddenly he is a plumber? He is hiding the violations. I said, he is going to do a hack job. Gene predicted, he will paint over the water damage. He will screw the outlet covers on tight so they don't rattle. It is cosmetic. It is putting lipstick on a pig. I went back upstairs. I heard noise in the hallway. Heavy footsteps. The dragging of equipment. I looked out my peephole. It was the maintenance guy. A sullen man named Eddie, who usually spent his days smoking by the dumpsters. He was dragging a large plastic bin down the hall. He stopped in front of the trash chute room. I watched as he opened the chute. He picked up a bucket from his cart. It was full of drywall debris, chunks of plaster, old insulation, pieces of wood with rusty nails. He dumped it down the chute. The sound was deafening, a crashing, tumbling roar that echoed through the building's metal spine. I grabbed my phone. I unlocked the door and stepped out. Eddie jumped. He looked at me, guilt written all over his face. He was holding a paint can now. What are you doing? I asked. holding the phone up. The camera was recording. "Just cleaning up," he mumbled. "You are dumping construction debris down the residential trash chute." I said, "That is illegal. Eddie, it clogs the compactor. It is a fire hazard." "And is that lead paint?" I zoomed in on the can. It was an old, rusted can of primer. He shoved the can into the bin and covered it with a black bag. "I am just doing what I was told. Lady, mind your own business." He turned and pushed his cart away. Moving fast toward the service elevator, I stopped recording. It was a small thing, a 30-second video of a man throwing trash away. But in the world of housing court, it was gold. It showed negligence. It showed improper disposal of hazardous materials. It showed that Dennis's renovations were cheap, dangerous, and off the books. Carelessness. That was what Simone, the attorney at the clinic, had told me to look for. Arrogant men get careless. I added the video to the cloud folder. That afternoon, my phone rang. It was my mother. I stared at the screen. I hadn't spoken to her since the layoff. I knew, with a sinking certainty, that this wasn't a social call. Tessa had been working on her. I answered. "Hello, Mom, Claire." Her voice was tight. It sounded like she was holding the phone with both hands. "Tessa tells me you are refusing to come home." I sat down at the table. "I am not refusing to come home. Mom, I am handling my situation. I have a lease. I have rights." "Rights?" my mother said. She sounded exhausted. "Claire, you are unemployed. You are fighting with a landlord. Tessa says you are harassing the neighbors with flyers. Is that true?" "I am not harassing anyone," I said, my voice rising. "I am informing them. Dennis is illegally evicting people. He is paying them cash to leave." "That is none of your business," my mother snapped. "Why do you always have to make everything a crusade? You lost your job. It happens. It is shameful, but it happens. But this? Fighting in court? It is undignified. Claire, it is dangerous." "Dangerous?" "Yes. You are a single woman living alone in the city, making enemies. Tessa is worried sick. She says you look deranged outside the courthouse." I closed my eyes. Deranged. That was Tessa's word. She was painting a picture of me as a spiraling mental case. "Tessa is lying to you," I said, "or she is manipulating the truth. Don't speak about your sister that way." My mother warned. "She has done nothing but try to help you. She offered you a home. She offered you stability, and you spit in her face because of your pride." "It is not pride. Mom, it is my life. It is a mess," she cried. "And you are dragging us into it. Do you know how it looks? Tessa has a reputation in the community. If her sister is getting evicted and sued, people talk." Claire, there it was, the core of the issue. It wasn't about my safety. It wasn't about my rent. It was about the optics. It was about how my failure reflected on the family brand. "I am sorry I'm an embarrassment," I said, my voice cold. "But I am not going to let a crook steal my home just to make Tessa's dinner parties more comfortable." I hung up. I sat in the silence, listening to the hum of the refrigerator. I felt hollowed out. The people who were supposed to be my safety net were the ones cutting the ropes. I added the call to the logbook. Family pressure to drop case. Cited reputation. The court date arrived on a Tuesday. It was raining. A gray, relentless drizzle that soaked through my cheap umbrella. I met Simone, the pro bono attorney the clinic had finally assigned to me, outside the courtroom. She was a small woman with sharp glasses and a briefcase that looked like it had been used as a weapon in a previous life. "Ready?" she asked. "As I will ever be," I said. We walked in. Dennis was there with Mr. Vance. Tessa was not there. I was grateful for that. I didn't think I could handle her pitying gaze today. "Mr. Vance started immediately. He didn't focus on the lease violations this time. He focused on me. "Your Honor," he said, smoothing his tie. "This is a tragic case. The tenant, Ms. Ward, has recently suffered a mental and professional collapse. She was terminated from her employment for misconduct. She has been erratic. She has been sliding notes under neighbors' doors at 3 a.m, spreading conspiracy theories. She is harassing the management staff." He painted a portrait of a woman unhinged, a woman who had snapped and was taking her anger out on a benevolent landlord. She is making the building unsafe. Your Honor, Vance concluded, we are simply asking for possession so that the other tenants can live in peace. I felt the heat rising in my cheeks. I wanted to scream. I wanted to stand up and shout that I was the only sane person in the room, but I didn't. I looked at Simone. Simone stood up. She didn't shout. She opened my binder. Your Honor, she said calmly, the landlord's characterization of my client is colorful, but it is not supported by facts. What is supported by facts is a pattern of harassment by the landlord. She handed up the binder. Here is the log of interactions. Here are the timestamps of the maintenance entries that occurred only after my client filed a complaint with the city. Here is a sworn affidavit from a neighbor, Ms. Pell, stating she was coerced into accepting an off-the-books cash payment to vacate her unit. The judge took the binder. She flipped through it. She stopped at the photo of the maintenance guy dumping the debris. She stopped at Nora's statement. Mr. Vance, the judge said, looking over her glasses. Cash payments? Vance looked uncomfortable. Relocation assistance is standard, Your Honor. Cash? Without a surrender agreement? That is not standard. That is highly irregular. And this video of the trash chute? Is that lead paint? We dispute the context of that video, Vance said quickly. The judge closed the binder. She looked at Dennis. Dennis was staring at me. His eyes were slits. I am ordering this to mediation. The judge said, I am not granting an eviction today. And Mr. Harrow, let me be clear. If I hear one whisper of retaliation against Ms. Ward or Ms. Pell, if the heat goes off, if the locks stick, if there is one more glitch with the rent portal, I will hold you in contempt. Do you understand? Dennis nodded stiffly. We walked out into the hallway. The adrenaline was crashing, leaving me shaky. Dennis and Vance were standing by the elevators. As I passed them, Dennis leaned in. He didn't look at me. He looked straight ahead at the elevator doors. You are making yourself unemployable. Claire, he hissed, who is going to hire a girl who sues her landlord? I talk to people. Your name is going to be mud. I stopped. The threat hit its mark. It was the one fear I hadn't been able to conquer. The fear that I was burning down my future to save my present. Simone stepped between us. Mr. Harrow, she said, her voice like a razor. Address my client again without me present, and I will add a harassment count to the filing before lunch. Dennis sneered and stepped into the elevator. We went to the mediation room. It was a small, windowless conference room that smelled of stale coffee. A court-appointed mediator sat at the head of the table. Vance slid a paper across the table. Here is the offer, he said. We want this over. Ms. Ward vacates in 14 days. We forgive the alleged late fees and the current month's rent. She gets her security deposit back in full. Mutual release of claims. It was the same offer as before, just dressed up in legal language. Leave. Disappear. Be quiet. Simone looked at me. It is a clean break. Claire, you could walk away. I thought about the apartment. I thought about the light in the morning. I thought about Nora Pell, who was packing her life into garbage bags because she was scared. I thought about Tessa's guest room and the rules. No, I said. Vance looked annoyed. Ms. Ward, you are unemployed. You cannot afford this apartment long term. This is a gift. I will find a job, I said. Here is my counteroffer. I slid my own paper across the table. 1. Lease renewal for 1 year at the current rent-stabilized rate. 2. Immediate repair of the window leak and electrical wiring, certified by a licensed contractor. 3. Written acknowledgement that no lease violations occurred. Vance laughed. It was a barking, incredulous sound. You are joking. You want to stay? After all this? I live there. I said, it is my home. I am not bargaining for an exit. Mr. Vance, I am bargaining for compliance with the law. Dennis wasn't in the room, but Vance looked at the paper like it was radioactive. We will not agree to this, he said. We will see you at trial. Fine, Simone said, packing up her briefcase. We look forward to discovery. We are particularly interested in the bank records regarding the cash payments to other tenants. Vance's eyes flickered. He looked startled. He hadn't expected us to push for financials. He thought this was a simple holdover case. He didn't realize he was standing on the edge of a tax fraud investigation. We left the courthouse. I felt lighter. I had refused the exit ramp. I was still on the highway, and I was speeding up. I got back to the apartment around 4. Marisol was there with Nora. They were drinking tea at my kitchen table. "How did it go?" Marisol asked. "We are going to trial," I said, "or they will settle." But I didn't fold. Nora looked at me with awe. "You told them no?" "I told them no." Nora shook her head. "You are brave. I was so scared when that woman came." I paused, taking off my coat. "What woman?" "Nora?" "The one who gave Dennis the money," Nora said. I froze. My coat slipped from my hand and hit the floor. "You saw a woman give Dennis money?" I asked slowly. Nora nodded. "Yeah, the day he offered me the cash. I told you. He had an envelope, but before he came to my door, I saw him in the alley. I was taking out my recycling." "Go on," I said. I sat down next to her. He was talking to a woman. Nora said, "She was in a car, a nice car. Silver." She handed him a thick envelope. I heard her say, "This should be enough," and he counted it. "Just thumbed through it, you know?" And he said, "It will be done." Then he came inside and offered me the 600. I felt the blood drain from my face. A silver car, an envelope of cash. This should be enough. Tessa. It wasn't just a bribe to kick me out. Tessa was financing the entire operation. She was funding the cash for keys scheme. She was the bank behind Dennis's renovation project. Why? To force me out? That seemed too expensive, too extreme. Unless she had a stake in it. I pulled out my phone. I found a picture of Tessa standing next to her silver sedan. "Nora." I said, "Is this the car?" Nora squinted. She put on her reading glasses. "Yes," she said, "that is the car. And that is the woman. I remember the scarf. She was wearing that scarf." I looked at the photo. Tessa was wearing a silk Hermes scarf. My sister wasn't just a concerned family member. She wasn't just a meddler. She was a silent partner. She was funding the displacement of my neighbors to clear the building. And she was using me as the catalyst. Or maybe just collateral damage. I stood up. I walked to the window. The sun was going down, turning the city skyline into a jagged silhouette of purple and black. I had crossed a line. I knew it then. This wasn't about surviving anymore. It wasn't about keeping my apartment. It was about exposing a rot that went deeper than I had ever imagined. My sister had paid my landlord to ruin my life, and in the process, she had funded the ruin of Nora's life and Marisol's life. I listened to the building settle around me. The pipes clanked, the floorboards creaked. It was a living thing, this building, and it was under attack. I wasn't just a tenant anymore. I was a witness. I went to my logbook. I opened a new page. Event. Witness testimony connects Tessa Ward to cash supply for illegal buyouts. Direct coordination confirmed. I wrote it down. My hand didn't shake. I was done being reasonable. I was done being the little sister who needed a shove. They wanted to see what happened when I couldn't handle life. They were about to find out exactly how I handled it. The job offer arrived on a Thursday morning, landing in my inbox with a quiet ping that sounded underwhelming given the stakes. It was for a logistics coordinator position at a medical supply distribution center in New Jersey. The title was a step down from senior analyst. The salary was $45,000 less than I had been making. I sat at my kitchen table. Staring at the offer letter, I read the benefits package. I read the start date. It was real. It was a paycheck. It was the difference between solvency and ruin. I clicked accept. I should have felt elated. I should have popped a bottle of cheap champagne or called my mother. Instead, I felt a heavy, sinking guilt in the pit of my stomach. I had secured a lifeline. But as I looked around my apartment, at the logbook open on the table, at the stack of legal papers, at the crack in the ceiling I had been staring at for 3 years, I realized that my relief was selfish. I was grabbing a life raft while the rest of the building was still treading water in the dark. I had a job, but I still didn't have safety. Later that afternoon, I met with Simone Klein at the Rivergate Legal Aid Center. Simone was different from the volunteer intake workers. She was sharp, weary, and moved with an economy of motion that suggested she didn't have time for drama. Her office was a closet overflowing with files, smelling of old coffee and toner. She listened as I updated her on the job. "That is good. Claire," she said, not looking up from her notes. "It weakens their argument that you are financially unstable. It shows the court you are mitigating damages." I told her about the envelope Nora Pell had seen. The silver car, the cash, Tessa. Simone stopped writing. She took off her glasses and rubbed the bridge of her nose. "You are telling me your sister is funding this?" "I think so," I said. Nora saw the car. She heard the woman say, "This should be enough." Simone leaned back in her chair. The chair groaned. "Listen to me closely. Claire, we are moving out of the realm of landlord-tenant dispute and into something much messier. If Dennis is taking unreported cash payments to facilitate move-outs, that is tax fraud. If he is coordinating with a third party, your sister, to harass tenants into leaving so they can flip the building, that is a conspiracy to commit fraud." "Fraud," I repeated. The word felt heavy. "Criminal. Potential fraud," Simone corrected. "But we cannot prove it with stories. We need hard evidence. And we need to be very careful. If we accuse a landlord of fraud without proof, the judge will see it as a desperate distraction tactic." She looked me in the eye. "You need to stop with the amateur detective work. No more recording people from doorways unless they are actively engaging you. No more flyers under doors that can be construed as harassment. We are going strictly by the book now. We need written affidavits. We need dates. We need official city inspections. It feels too slow." I said, "He is moving fast. He is gutting the building. The law is slow." Simone said, "That is its nature. But it is also heavy. When it finally lands, it crushes things. Let us make sure it lands on him, not you." The following Tuesday, the city inspector arrived. His name was Mr. Henderson. He was a man who looked like he had been carved out of gray rock. He carried a clipboard and a flashlight, and he did not smile. Dennis met him in the lobby. I watched from the stairwell. Dennis was wearing his best suit, the one he usually saved for court. "Mr. Henderson," Dennis said, extending a hand. "Good to see you. I think you will find everything is in order. We are just in the middle of some exciting upgrades. Mr. Henderson did not shake his hand. He just looked at the clipboard. "I am here for a code compliance check based on complaints regarding Unit 3B and Unit 4B, he said. "Lead the way." Dennis's smile faltered. Just for a second, before he plastered it back on. "Of course. Right this way." I went back to my apartment and waited. When Mr. Henderson knocked, I opened the door. Dennis was standing behind him, radiating a heat of pure malice. Mr. Henderson walked in. He didn't look at my furniture. He walked straight to the window. He ran a moisture meter over the drywall. The device beeped loudly. "Active leak," Henderson said. He wrote it down. He went to the hallway. He flipped the switch. The light buzzed and flickered. He unscrewed the faceplate of the outlet. He shone his flashlight inside. "Improper grounding," he muttered. "Old wiring. Not up to code." He turned to Dennis. "Did you pull a permit for the electrical work in this building?" Dennis shifted his weight. "We are doing cosmetic updates. Mostly. We haven't touched the main lines yet." Mr. Henderson shone his flashlight on a patch of fresh paint near the ceiling. "That is new drywall," he said. "You open the wall. If you open the wall, you pull a permit, especially in a building of this age. I believe my contractor handled that." Dennis stammered. "I will need to see those permits." Henderson said. He wrote something on a pink sheet of paper. He went downstairs to Marisol's unit. I stood in my doorway and listened. I heard the beep of the moisture meter again. I heard Henderson's flat voice asking about ventilation. When they came back out, Henderson handed Dennis the pink sheet. You have 14 days to rectify the violations, Henderson said, and stop all construction work until you produce the permits. If I see one more contractor dumping debris, I am shutting the site down. Dennis took the paper. He looked like he wanted to eat it. As Henderson walked to the elevator, Dennis turned to look at me. He didn't say a word. He just stared. It was a look of promise. 2 days later, I walked out of my building at 7 in the morning to go to my new job. I had my travel mug of coffee. I had my bag. I walked to the spot where I parked my car, a 10-year-old Honda that I kept running with hope and prayer. The spot was empty. I stopped. I blinked, thinking I had parked somewhere else, but I hadn't. I paid $150 a month for that spot. It was assigned to me in the lease. I looked at the pavement. There were drag marks in the dust. My stomach dropped. I pulled out my phone and called the towing company number listed on the sign in the parking lot. "Yeah, we have it," the dispatcher said, sounding bored. "Towed last night." "Why?" I asked. "I pay for that spot." Order came from the property manager. The guy said, "Reason listed was expired registration." "My registration is not expired," I shouted. "It is good until November. Look, lady, I just drive the truck. You want it back. It is $300 cash, plus a storage fee for every day it sits here." I hung up. I stood on the sidewalk, shaking. $300. I had the money, barely, from my first paycheck. But that $300 was meant for groceries. It was meant for the electric bill. It wasn't about the car. It was about the friction. Dennis knew he couldn't legally evict me yet, so he was going to make every single day of my life expensive and difficult. He was going to bleed me dry, $300 at a time, until I just gave up. I took a cab to the impound lot, which cost me another $40. I paid the fee. I showed them my valid registration. The guy behind the glass just shrugged. "Take it up with your landlord," he said. I drove to work. I was an hour late. My new boss, a stern woman named Linda, looked at the clock when I walked in. "Car trouble," I said, breathless. "I am so sorry. Don't make a habit of it." "Claire," she said, "we run on a schedule here." I sat at my desk and turned on my computer. I felt like crying, but I didn't. I was done crying. I scanned the receipt from the tow yard. I scanned my valid registration. I emailed them to Simone. Subject: retaliation, illegal tow. Body: he is trying to make me lose this job too. That night, I was sitting on my couch, exhausted. When my phone pinged with an email notification, it wasn't from Simone. It wasn't from Dennis. It was from an address I didn't recognize. Watcher1992protonmail.com. The subject line was blank. I opened it. There was no text in the body of the email, just an image attachment. I clicked on it. It was a screenshot of a digital receipt from a money transfer app. It looked like Zelle or Venmo. Amount: $1,000. Recipient: Dennis Harrow. Note: thank you for handling the 4B issue. Sender: T. Ward Sterling. I stared at the screen. The room seemed to tilt. T. Ward Sterling. Tessa's married name was Sterling. She kept Ward as a middle name, a pretension she had adopted after she got married to keep the family connection visible in her social circles. The date on the transfer was 3 days before Dennis offered me the first buyout. Handling the 4B issue, it was the smoking gun. It was proof that my sister was directly paying my landlord to target me. Then I saw the line of text below the image. It was small, easy to miss. Thought you should know. Who sent this? I replied immediately. Who is this? The email bounced back instantly. Address not found. It was a burner account, created just for this one message and then deleted. I sat back, my heart racing. Someone else knew. Someone else was watching Dennis. Was it a disgruntled employee? A secretary? Maybe even Dennis's wife? I forwarded the email to Simone. Her response came 10 minutes later. Call me. I dialed her number. Claire. She said, where did you get this? It was anonymous. I said, just arrived in my inbox. Okay, Simone said. Her voice was cautious. This is interesting, But legally, it is tricky. Why? I asked. It proves everything. It proves someone sent you a screenshot. She said, we cannot authenticate it. We don't know who sent it. In court, Dennis's lawyer will argue it is photoshopped. He will argue it is inadmissible hearsay. Without the original metadata or a witness to testify to the transaction, it is just a picture. So it is useless? I felt the hope draining out of me. No, she said, it is not useless. It is a map. We can't use the screenshot as evidence, but we can use it to draft a subpoena. Now we know exactly what to ask for. We ask for Dennis's bank records specifically looking for transfers from T. Ward Sterling. We ask for transfers in the amount of $1,000. We have a target now. But we have to get to discovery first. I said, exactly. Simone said, which means we have to survive the next hearing. We have to convince the judge that there is enough smoke to warrant looking for the fire. I hung up. I looked at the screenshot again. T. Ward Sterling, my sister, my blood. She had typed that note. Thank you for handling the 4B issue. She had reduced my life, my home, my struggle to an issue that could be handled with $1,000. The next day was Sunday, every Sunday. My parents hosted a family dinner. It was a tradition as old as my memory. Since the layoff, I had skipped every single one. I couldn't bear the pity. I couldn't bear Tessa's performance. But this Sunday, I put on a dress. I put on makeup. I brushed my hair until it shone. I was going to dinner. When I walked into my parents' house, the smell of roast beef and rosemary hit me. It smelled like safety. It smelled like the lie I had lived in for 30 years. Claire, my mother cried when she saw me. She dropped the salad tongs. Oh, thank God. You came. She hugged me. She felt fragile. I hugged her back, but I felt stiff. I walked into the living room. Tessa was there, sitting on the sofa with a glass of red wine. Her husband, Doug, was watching golf. When Tessa saw me, her eyes widened. She set her wine glass down a little too hard. Well, she said, look who decided to join the land of the living. Hello? Tessa, I said. I sat down in the armchair opposite her. I crossed my legs. I didn't smile. Dinner was a tense affair. My father talked about the weather. My mother talked about the neighbors. Everyone was carefully avoiding the elephant in the room. Finally, as we were clearing the plates, Tessa couldn't help herself. So, Claire, she said, scraping leftovers into the trash, how is the situation? Are you still staying in that awful apartment? I picked up a stack of plates. The apartment is fine. Tessa, I am handling it. Handling it, she repeated. She let out a short laugh. Is that what you call it? Mom told me your car got towed. That sounds expensive. It was, I said calmly, but I got it back. You know, she said, leaning against the counter. You are just prolonging the inevitable. It is painful to watch. Why don't you just let us help you? I have the guest room ready. You could be sleeping in a real bed tonight. I turned to look at her. I looked at her manicured hands. I looked at the silk scarf around her neck, the same scarf she had worn in the photo Nora identified. I appreciate the offer, I said, but I prefer to pay my own way, even if it is hard. Tessa's eyes narrowed. You are so stubborn. It is going to destroy you. And for what? To prove a point? Maybe, I said, or maybe I just value integrity. She flinched. It was subtle, a tightening of the corner of her mouth. We went back to the table for coffee. Doug, trying to break the tension, started talking about Tessa's work. Tessa is up for a seat on the Heritage Foundation board. He said proudly, big interview next week. If she gets it, she will be the youngest member in history. Really? I asked. I looked at Tessa. Congratulations. That is a prestigious board. It is, Tessa said, preening slightly. They do important work. Scholarship funds, community outreach. They are very strict about ethics, aren't they? I asked. The room went quiet. Tessa looked at me. What do you mean? I just remember reading their bylaws. I said, taking a sip of coffee, I think they have a clause about reputation. They do extensive vetting. They don't want anyone attached to scandal or financial impropriety. Tessa went still. Her coffee cup hovered halfway to her mouth. Why would you bring that up? She asked sharply. No reason. I said, I just know how hard you have worked for your image. It would be a shame if something messy got in the way. Tessa stared at me. For the first time, I saw genuine fear behind the blue eyes. She realized I wasn't just the flailing little sister anymore. She realized I had teeth. I have nothing to hide, she said, but her voice lacked its usual steel. Good, I said. Then you have nothing to worry about. I finished my coffee and stood up. Thank you for dinner. Mom, it was delicious. I walked out. I didn't say goodbye to Tessa. I didn't have to. The message had been delivered. The next week, the tenants of 402 West 14th Street met in the lobby. It wasn't a formal meeting. It started with me and Marisol standing by the mailboxes. Then Nora joined us. Then Mr. Henderson from 2C. Then the young couple from the 5th floor who had just received a rent hike notice. Simone was there. She stood on a crate so she could be seen. You have rights, she told them. Her voice echoed off the marble floors. You have the right to a habitable apartment. You have the right to organize, and you have the right to refuse illegal offers. Nora stepped forward. She was shaking. But she spoke. He gave me cash. She said to the room. He told me the building was being condemned. He lied. A murmur went through the crowd. He told me that too. The guy from 5A said. He said I had to leave by Tuesday. The stories poured out. It was a flood. Every person in that lobby had a piece of the puzzle. Dennis had isolated us, making us think we were each fighting a unique battle. But when we stood together, the pattern was undeniable. I looked at their faces. They were tired. They were scared. But they were also angry. We are going to file a collective action, Simone said. Not just individual complaints. We are going to file a harassment suit on behalf of the tenant association. We don't have a tenant association. Someone said, we do now. I said, I pulled a clipboard from my bag. I had typed up a sign-in sheet. Sign here. I said, name and unit number. They lined up. The following morning, the process server arrived. I was working from home that day. My new job allowed one remote day a week. I sat by the window and watched. A man in a windbreaker walked up to the building. He buzzed the super. Dennis happened to be walking out. He was on his phone, looking agitated. The man stepped in front of him. Dennis Harrow? Dennis stopped. Yeah? The man shoved a thick stack of papers into Dennis's chest. You have been served. The man said. Dennis grabbed the papers. He looked at the cover sheet. Claire Ward et al. V. Harrow Management. He looked up. He scanned the windows of the building. He found me. I was standing in my window. 4 floors up. I didn't wave. I didn't smile. I just stood there, my hand resting on the glass. Dennis stared at me. It wasn't the red-faced anger I had seen in court. It was something colder. It was a look of pure, distilled hatred. It was the look of a man who realized that the insect he had been trying to crush had just learned how to sting. He didn't throw the papers down. He didn't yell. He tucked the papers under his arm, straightened his jacket, and walked to his car. I watched him drive away. A chill went through me. Simone had warned me. When someone like Dennis loses control, they don't become reasonable. He wasn't going to fight me with notices anymore. He wasn't going to fight me with bribes. He was going to use the system. He was going to use Tessa's money and his lawyers to bury me in procedure, to bankrupt me with delays, to destroy me quietly, efficiently, and legally. I turned away from the window. I looked at my logbook. Event. Defendant served with collective action complaint. 9:15 a.m. I closed the book. The war wasn't over. It had just entered a new, more dangerous phase. And I had to be ready. The morning of the final hearing. The sky was a bruised purple, heavy with a storm that refused to break. I stood in front of my mirror, adjusting the collar of my blazer. It was the same blazer I had worn to the interview where I got my first job as an analyst, and the same one I had worn the day I packed my box and left the firm. It was armor. It had to be. I was not going to court alone this time. Down in the lobby, Marisol was waiting. So was Nora Pell. So was Mr. Henderson from 2C, leaning heavily on his cane, but wearing a tie that looked like it was older than I was. We were a motley crew, a nurse, a retiree, a diner waitress, and a disgraced analyst. But as we walked to the subway together, we moved with a singular, quiet purpose. The courthouse felt different today. The last time, I had felt like an intruder in a machine designed to crush me. Today, the machine felt clogged. We were the wrench in the gears. When we entered the courtroom, the air was thick. Dennis Harrow was already at the plaintiff's table. He looked tired. The arrogance that usually rolled off him like cologne was gone, replaced by a twitchy, nervous energy. He kept smoothing his hair, checking his watch, tapping his pen. Mr. Vance, his slick attorney, looked equally strained. He was shuffling papers with aggressive speed, his brow furrowed, but it was the person sitting in the gallery, directly behind Dennis, that made my steps falter. Tessa, my sister, was sitting there, upright and pristine, wearing a charcoal gray suit that screamed respectability. Her hands were folded in her lap. She looked like she was attending a board meeting, or perhaps a funeral for someone she didn't like very much. She saw me. Her eyes flicked over my face, then to Marisol, then to the rest of the tenants filing in behind me. For a split second, I saw a crack in the porcelain mask, a flash of genuine alarm at the sheer number of us. But she sealed it instantly. She gave me a small, sad nod, the kind of nod you give a drug addict you have tried everything to save. I didn't nod back. I walked past the bar and took my seat next to Simone. "She is here," I whispered to Simone. "I see her," Simone said without looking up. "Do not look at her. She is furniture. Focus on the judge. All rise." The bailiff's voice cut through the murmur. Judge Holloway entered. She was the same judge from the preliminary hearing, the one who had spotted the inconsistencies in the photos. She looked at the packed courtroom, her eyes lingering on the group of tenants in the back rows. She sat down and adjusted her glasses. "Case number 7940, she read. "Harrow Management versus Claire Ward, consolidated with the petition for harassment and code enforcement filed by the Tenant Association. Mr. Vance stood up. He buttoned his jacket. "Your Honor," he began, his voice booming with forced confidence. "We are here today to finalize the possession of Unit 4B. The defense has tried to turn a simple holdover case into a circus. They have dragged in unrelated maintenance complaints and conspiracy theories to distract from the simple fact that Miss Ward is a disruptive tenant who is no longer suitable for this community." He pointed a finger at me. "Ms. Ward is the instigator. Your Honor, she has organized a campaign of harassment against a landlord who has been nothing but patient. She is unemployed, desperate, and lashing out." I stared straight ahead. I didn't flinch. I let the word instigator hang in the air. Simone stood up. She moved slowly, deliberately. "Your Honor," she said, her voice calm and low. "Ms. Ward is not an instigator. She is a witness. She is simply the first person who refused to be bullied into silence, and as the evidence will show, she is not the only one." Simone called me to the stand first. I walked up the 3 steps to the witness box. I swore to tell the truth. I sat down. "Ms. Ward," Simone said, "please tell the court, simply and clearly, the timeline of events beginning on May 3rd. I took a breath. I didn't look at Dennis. I didn't look at Tessa. I looked at the judge. On May 3rd, I was laid off from my position as a senior analyst. I said, my voice was steady. It sounded like I was reading a weather report. On May 5th, 48 hours later, I received a notice to cure for noise complaints that were not documented. On May 6th, Mr. Harrow left a voicemail offering me $500 cash to vacate the unit immediately. I continued. I listed the dates. I listed the amounts. I described the envelope Nora Pell had received. I described the retaliatory towing of my car. I didn't use emotional words. I didn't say I was scared. I didn't say I was angry. I just gave the data points. Why did you refuse the money? Simone asked. Because it was a bribe, I said, and because I realized that if I took it, I would be participating in the displacement of my neighbors. Mr. Vance cross-examined me. He tried to rattle me. Ms. Ward, isn't it true you are currently under financial strain? Yes. Isn't it true you have a strained relationship with your family? Irrelevant. Simone objected. Sustained, the judge said. Vance tried again. You claim this is a pattern, Ms. Ward, but you have no direct proof of these bribes other than hearsay. Do you? You never saw money change hands yourself. I saw the pattern. I said, as an analyst, I look for statistical anomalies. 5 tenants receiving cash offers in the same month that the landlord claims he wants to renovate? That is not a coincidence. That is a strategy. Vance sat down, looking frustrated. I hadn't cracked. Then, Simone started calling the other tenants. Nora Pell took the stand. She was shaking, but she told her story about the $600. She told the court about the fear. Then, Simone introduced a new piece of evidence. Your Honor, we would like to submit Exhibit C. It was a screenshot from a phone. It belonged to the tenant in 3B, a young guy named Leo who worked in tech. Simone projected it onto the screen. It was a text message thread between Leo and the building's superintendent assistant, a guy who did Dennis's dirty work. Assistant, we need Unit 3B cleared by the 1st. Dennis is breathing down my neck. Leo, I told you, I need more time. Assistant, there is no time. Dennis already got paid on his end. He needs the unit empty. A murmur went through the courtroom. Dennis already got paid on his end. Simone left the image on the screen. Paid by whom? She asked the room. If this is a simple renovation funded by the management company, why is the landlord getting paid to empty units? Dennis shifted in his seat. He whispered something furious to Vance. Simone wasn't done. Your Honor, during discovery, we requested the financial records for Harrow Management to verify the claimed renovation budget. What we found was puzzling. She held up a spreadsheet. Mr. Harrow reports a rental income of $40,000 a month for this building. However, his bank deposits for the last 6 months show an influx of funds totaling nearly $60,000. These extra funds are deposited in cash or via peer-to-peer transfer apps, often in round numbers, 1,000, 2,000. She looked at Dennis. There is a shadow economy in this building. Your Honor, someone is funding these buyouts. Someone is paying Mr. Harrow to clear this building, and that income is not being reported on his ledgers. The judge looked at Dennis. Her expression had hardened from skepticism to suspicion. Mr. Vance, do you have an explanation for these discrepancies? Vance stood up, sweating now. Your Honor, my client manages multiple properties, personal loans, family investments. These are not relevant to the eviction of Ms. Ward. I think they are highly relevant, the judge said. If there is an external pressure to evict, it goes to the heart of the retaliation claim. Vance looked desperate. He needed to change the narrative. He needed to make this look like a personal squabble, not a criminal conspiracy. He turned to the gallery. The defense claims there is a conspiracy. Your Honor, to refute this, we would like to call a character witness. We call Tessa Sterling. My breath hitched. Simone looked at me, surprised. They are calling her? It was a gamble, a massive, arrogant gamble. Vance thought that by putting my respectable, high-society sister on the stand, he could shame me. He thought she would paint me as the black sheep. The liar, the unstable failure. Tessa stood up. She smoothed her skirt. She walked to the stand with the grace of a woman who was used to being looked at. She swore in, Mrs. Sterling. Vance said gently, You are the defendant's sister? I am, Tessa said. Her voice was clear, melodic. And you are familiar with her current situation? Sadly. Yes, Claire has been struggling since she lost her job. She has been very emotional, paranoid, even. Vance nodded. And do you have any knowledge of this alleged conspiracy to bribe the landlord? Tessa smiled a small, pitying smile. Absolutely not. The idea is ridiculous. We are a normal family. We don't get involved in landlord schemes. Vance smiled. Thank you. Just one more question. Do you know Mr. Dennis Harrow personally? This was the setup. She was supposed to say no. She was supposed to say she was a stranger, proving that there could be no collusion. Tessa looked at Vance. Then she looked at the judge. Then, for a fraction of a second, her eyes darted to Dennis. I have never even met Dennis, she said. It was too emphatic. It was too quick. Simone stood up. Cross-examination. Mrs. Sterling, Simone said, walking toward the stand. You say you have never met Mr. Harrow? That is correct. Never spoken to him? No. Simone picked up a piece of paper. It was the photo Nora had identified, the one of Tessa and her car. Do you own a silver Mercedes sedan? License plate KL492? Tessa stiffened. Yes, that is my car. And were you parked in the alley behind 402 West 14th Street on the afternoon of May 15th? Tessa blinked. I might have been visiting my sister. Visiting your sister in the alley? Simone asked. Not the front entrance? Tessa fumbled. I was looking for parking. Simone took a step closer. Mrs. Sterling, look around this courtroom. Can you point out Dennis Harrow? Tessa froze. If she pointed him out immediately, it would suggest she knew him. If she couldn't point him out, it would be a lie, because he was sitting right there at the plaintiff's table, the only man in a suit besides the lawyers. Tessa's eyes darted around the room. She looked at the bailiff. She looked at the clerk. She looked at Dennis, then quickly looked away. I am not sure. She stammered. I told you, I don't know him. You don't know the man suing your sister? Simone asked. The man sitting 10 feet away from you? The man whose name you used in a conversation with your sister when you told her he was just a businessman? I didn't say that, Tessa snapped. Her composure cracked. Claire is lying. Simone didn't flinch. Mrs. Sterling, you are under oath. Did you, or did you not, transfer $1,000 to Mr. Harrow on May 2nd? Tessa's face went white. She opened her mouth, then closed it. She looked at Dennis. Dennis looked like he wanted to vanish through the floor. I transfer money to a lot of people, Tessa whispered, for charity. Charity, Simone repeated. She let the word hang there, dripping with irony. The judge leaned forward. We are going to take a 10-minute recess, the judge said. Her voice was ice, and I suggest the witness remember the penalties for perjury. The gavel banged. The room erupted into noise. I stood up, my legs shaking. I needed water. I walked out into the hallway. I was standing by the water fountain, trying to swallow past the lump in my throat. When a hand grabbed my arm, it was Tessa. Her grip was hard. Her nails dug into my skin through my blazer. She pulled me into a small alcove near the restrooms. What are you doing? She hissed. Her face was inches from mine. The porcelain mask was gone. Her eyes were wild. I am telling the truth. Tessa, I said, pulling my arm away. You are ruining us, she whispered. Do you have any idea what you are doing? The foundation board is watching this. If my name gets dragged into a fraud investigation, if Doug finds out, then you shouldn't have done it. I said, you shouldn't have paid him. I did it for you, she cried. It was a strangled sound, halfway between a scream and a sob. I did it to get you out of that hole. I wanted you to come home. I paid him to give you a push because you were never going to leave on your own. You paid him to harass me. I said, you paid him to evict Nora. You paid him to break the law. I was helping, she insisted, but she looked terrified. She looked at the courtroom doors. Listen to me. Claire, listen. She reached into her purse. She pulled out a checkbook. Stop this. Right now. Tell your lawyer you made a mistake. Tell the judge you were confused. And then what? I asked. I will write you a check. She said. Her hands were shaking so hard she dropped the pen. $10,000. Right now. Cash tomorrow. Just walk away. Please. I stared at her. $10,000. It was the same language Dennis had used. Cash for keys. Relocation assistance. Incentive. To Tessa, everything was a transaction. Love was a transaction. Loyalty was a transaction. And now, silence was a transaction. She didn't see me as her sister. She saw me as a liability to be paid off. I looked at the checkbook. I looked at her desperate, tear-streaked face. "Keep your money." "Tessa," I said softly. I turned around. "Claire," she hissed, "Mom and Dad will never forgive you. You will be dead to this family." I stopped. I didn't turn back. I was dead to this family the moment I lost my job. I said, "You just didn't bury me yet." I walked back into the courtroom. Simone was waiting at the table. "She cornered you, didn't she?" Simone asked quietly. I nodded. "She offered me $10,000 to drop it. She admitted she did it to give me a push." Simone's eyes narrowed. "Did anyone else hear it?" "No, just us." Simone thought for a second. "Okay," she said. "It is hearsay again, but we can use it." The judge returned. The court came to order. Simone stood up. "Your Honor, before we proceed, I must inform the court of an interaction that just occurred in the hallway. The witness, Mrs. Sterling, approached my client and offered her $10,000 to drop this case." Vance jumped up. "Objection. Hearsay. Fabrication. It goes to credibility." "Your Honor," Simone shot back, "and it establishes the pattern of financial inducement. We are requesting an immediate subpoena for communications between Mrs. Sterling and Mr. Harrow, specifically, emails sent from her work domain at the Sterling Foundation." Vance looked like he was having a stroke. "This is a fishing expedition." The judge looked at Tessa, who was sitting in the gallery, pale as a ghost. The witness's testimony regarding her relationship with the plaintiff was unconvincing. The judge said, "And the financial discrepancies are real." She wrote on her notepad, "I am granting a limited subpoena. Mr. Harrow, you will unlock your phone and provide access to your email application to the bailiff immediately. We will search for the keyword, Sterling." Dennis went rigid. "But my privacy." "Now, Mr. Harrow," the judge said, "or I will hold you in contempt and detain you until you comply." Dennis pulled out his phone. His hands were shaking so bad he dropped it on the table. The bailiff picked it up. The court waited in silence. The bailiff scrolled. It took 5 minutes. It felt like 5 years. The air conditioning hummed. I could hear my own heart beating. "Found one," the bailiff said. He handed the phone to the judge. The judge read it. Her face was impassive. She read it again. She looked up. "Let the record show." The judge said, her voice echoing in the silent room, "An email dated April 29th from T-Sterling-at-foundation-.org to Dennis-Harrow-at-Harrow-MGMT-.com." She began to read aloud. Subject, 4B timeline. "Dennis, just checking in on the timeline for the vacancy in 4B. The family is anxious to have this resolved. As discussed, the incentive funds have been transferred to your personal account. Please ensure the transition is handled discreetly and quickly. We need her out by June 1st. Let me know if the pressure needs to be increased." The judge lowered the phone. Let me know if the pressure needs to be increased. The silence in the room was absolute. It was the silence of a bomb that had just gone off. Tessa put her head in her hands. Dennis stared at the table. Vance closed his file. He knew it was over. The judge took off her glasses. She looked at Dennis. Then she looked at Tessa. Then she looked at me. "This court finds that the eviction proceedings against Claire Ward were initiated in bad faith and are retaliatory in nature." She said, "The petition for possession is denied with prejudice." She wasn't finished. "Furthermore, this court finds sufficient evidence of a conspiracy to harass tenants and potential financial impropriety. I am referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for investigation into fraud and tenant harassment. I am also referring Mr. Harrow to the City Housing Authority for an immediate, building-wide audit of all renovations and evictions in the last 2 years." She banged the gavel. It sounded like a gunshot. Case closed. Dennis didn't look at me. He slumped in his chair. A man whose empire of cards had just been blown over by a gust of wind. Tessa stood up. She didn't look at Dennis. She didn't look at me. She walked out of the courtroom. her heels clicking a fast, retreating rhythm on the floor. She was running. She was running to her PR team, to her husband, to her lawyers. She was running to try and spin a story that had just spun out of her control. I sat there. I felt Simone's hand on my shoulder. We did it. Claire, she said. I looked around. Nora was crying, hugging Marisol. Mr. Henderson was nodding slowly, a grim smile on his face. I felt quiet. It wasn't a Hollywood victory. There was no applause. There was no ticker tape parade. I still had a leak in my bedroom window. I still had a lower-paying job. I had lost my sister, likely forever. My parents would probably never speak to me again, but as I stood up and walked toward the exit, I realized something. I still had my key. I walked out of the courthouse into the rain. It felt cool on my face. I wasn't the same person who had walked into that building months ago with a box of office supplies and a heart full of shame. That Claire was gone. The Claire who walked out stood on the sidewalk and watched the city traffic. I checked my watch. I had to get to work. I had a shift to finish. I pulled my coat tighter. I was tired. I was scarred. But I was free. And for the first time in a long time, the ground beneath my feet felt solid. Thank you for listening to Claire's story. It is a reminder that sometimes the hardest battles are the ones fought in quiet rooms with paperwork, and that family is not always who you are born with, but who you stand with. I would love to know where you are listening from today. Please leave a comment below. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to Revenge Stories for more tales of justice and resilience. And tell me in the comments, do you think Claire should have taken the $10,000? Share your thoughts.